perform our duties honestly, wisely, fearlessly, and well for the good of those we seek to serve. Please be seated. Okay, I'll call the regular meeting of December 19th to order. And Mrs. Williams, or is there any late items? Just the one late item. Okay, which I'll be adding for the closed agenda. So we'll move to approval of the agenda, and I'd like to add one item of new business on the closed section of the agenda, item 5.3. And it's covered under the closed sessions already for the meeting tonight. So with that, a motion to approve the agenda as circulated and amended. So moved. Seconded? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we move to item 4, which we have the adoption of the November 4th, 2016 Special Committee of the Whole minutes. And there is a amendment to that. It is on your agenda, and it's quite lengthy. So with respect to that, I don't know that I'll read it all out in detail. It's with respect to changing of the minutes to clarify the conflict of interest stated by Councillor Staples with respect to the Council and Green community. Okay, so a motion to move is amended. Is a seconder? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, we move to item 4.2, which is the November 21st council minutes, and a motion to adopt. Moved, seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And item 5.3, which is the December 5th council annual meeting minutes, and a motion to adopt with the amendment. Okay.
Moved as amended.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we move to delegations, and I'd like to welcome back Council and Green Community, Judy Stafford, Executive Director. Again, our apologies for not being able to present at the last meeting, and welcome back. Thank you.
And I just have to leave before the presentation, yes. So just for the same conflict stated in the minutes of meeting.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Stafford.
Thank you. I always love coming here, so it's all right to come back. So thank you very much for allowing us to come here and present tonight. I just want to acknowledge some of our staff and board and supporters who are here as well. I just have to start off by saying about how much I love this town and I love this community. I've lived in a lot of places in my life, and I've never, ever felt so much gratitude as I do by living here. And I also have to apologize because I feel like somehow we did a disservice in not explaining or giving enough information about everything that we do for this community that would help you make a better decision about funding us again. We were very honored in 2013 when we received a letter from the city staff advising us that we would be funded under environmental programs, not to be confused with Environmental Commission budget, as a contribution, and as a result of this council decision, we would not have to apply each year through the grant and aid process. We do write and submit a final report on all the programs and initiatives that's submitted to your finance department at the end of each year. And at the beginning of each year, we come here as a delegation and present our annual year in review video to you, also keeping you apprised of all the things that we do. Since 2013, because of that budget decision, we've not been required to submit a grant and aid application. Therefore, you can understand that I was surprised when I received an email back in September, 3 days before the grant applications were due, stating that we would have to submit a grant and aid. This was confusing, as I was told that a review of all organizations who were funded was being done. I did submit a very brief application with my annual report from last year. So for historical context, for some of you who might not know, we have been receiving financial support from the city since 2009. We received $500 for the Kin Park Community Garden extension at that time. In 2010, we received $2,000 as a grant and aid. In 2011, we received $3,000 as a grant and aid. 2012, we received $3,500 as a grant and aid. And then for 2013, 14, 15, and 16, we received $4,000 as a contribution. Since 2010, other than the original application for $500, we've always said that the funding was related to our core programs. So there's some discussion that the city doesn't fund core operations, but again, that's a bit confusing when we actually have been receiving the contributions for the last 4 years for core programming. And I believe there are a few other organizations, including the Restorative Justice Society, that does receive that funding as well. There's also some perception that we don't provide support for the actual residents of Duncan. So in your agenda package, I've lost count, but I think there's about 20 letters of support from community members and businesses who speak specifically how CGC, through programming and through the purchase of the Old Phoenix Hotel, have made direct impacts to their businesses' successes, as well as other organizations, including VIU, Island Health, and other nonprofit and residents. One letter that stands out to me from Psychotherapy states unequivocally that their business has grown enormously since they located into our building. The walk-by business has increased beyond measure, and the area now feels safe and inviting. The very popular Duncan Garage and Cafe said, when the Phoenix was operating, we had endless problems. Now all of Duncan gets to enjoy a cleaner, vibrant, friendlier, established part of downtown Duncan. Duncan Street has people arriving from all over the world. It's a destination area for residents and shoppers alike. It's a place to meet like-minded people and enjoy the fruits of establishments like Cowichan Green Community. All of those letters were received within 2 days of me putting out a call. I can't remember now if the Salvation Army letter actually got attached because it came late, but I've watched with pride as the people in the area of Duncan and North Cowichan have grown in knowledge of wiser ways of living and being, mainly because CGC has spearheaded many connections. So since our official inception in 2004, we've had our offices in downtown Duncan. And we've been so grateful to have been ambassadors for the city all these years. We have served thousands of people every year, providing resources, education, and information to hosting events and programs. And for those of you who don't have long memories, CGC was one of the original organizers of the extremely successful award-winning community gardens at Centennial Park. That was the first community garden project that we were involved with. And those gardens were integral in starting the transformation of that whole park. Since those early days, there's now a cob oven, a splash park, and it attracts hundreds of families to that inclusive space. Quite a change from the unsafe place that it used to be before CGC helped to build those gardens. In 2007, CGC also installed the community gardens at King Park, which the city owns in partnership with North Cowichan. Since that time, CGC has a license of occupation from the city and North Cowichan, and we are basically the stewards of that place. We've installed additional community gardens. We've repurposed the old derelict pool building. We offer a variety of garden and farm programming all year there, a summer camp for children, and we partner with VIU for their West programs, supporting dozens of young adults with a variety of challenges. What you may not know is, along with programming, we work very hard to keep that space safe. Every morning before summer camp, our youth counselors had to perform a sweep of the park, picking up dozens of needles, picking up garbage, waking homeless people in the most compassionate way we could before our children came to camp there. We had over 185 children come to that park this summer, and most of them would not have come if that park was not as safe as it is because of the work we've done there. We fed countless people from the produce we also grow there, from the camp children to the school students next door to the folks at the food bank. The programs we've offered just at Kin Park, gardening workshops, and Kin Park and CGC, gardening workshops, free family cooking classes, preserving and canning workshops, the summer camp, Earth Day. We host the VIU West students. We offer the Farmers Market coupon program that brought $13,000 directly into City Square for the past 3 years for our local farmers. We support Meals on the Ground, the homeless program that feeds folks 3 nights a week at United Church. Fruit Save, which is our fruit gleaning project in its 11th year, This year, we reclaimed over 21,000 pounds of fruit. That included windfall that went to farmers' livestock that was moved from the ground, and 6,320 pounds of fruit that went directly to folks through various emergency food providers and local schools. That program receives no funding. Many of those programs are not funded well at all, including the BIU West program. We're paid $2,000 a year to support that program, and it costs us way over $8,000 to run. The Farmers Market Coupon Program, we receive $900 that we give to a volunteer to help us. It's a very intensive program to run administratively. When we do receive any unallocated dollars, like we have been from the city, it goes to fund those vital programs that support all our residents. But we're not only known for our programs, we really are known mostly for our transformation of downtown. Before we decided to purchase the old Phoenix Motor Inn, we met with the staff and the mayor to see if this would be a good idea and how could it benefit the city. We kept that important dialogue going throughout the subsequent purchase and renovations that turned a hub of crime into the safe, welcoming, vibrant space it is today. Together with the city's support, we transferred that whole street, the park, and the neighborhood. Charles Huey Park used to be an epicenter of unsafe activities. It's now safer and welcoming, and this is just a nice place to be, live, and work. And let me remind Council that had we not purchased the hotel, another interested business was also vying for the property, with the aim of keeping the pub and liquor store going and reopening the late night cabaret. And that is something no one wanted to see happen, especially the city. Once we did decide to purchase the building, we received a lot of support from the city and staff by waiving the building permit and development fees that were well over $10,000. All the staff, especially Michelle Jeannot and David Hewitson, were exceptional in supporting us through what was a very daunting and lengthy process. And since we purchased the building in 2012, we're very proud to say that we have contributed over $106,000 in property taxes, $823.30 to be exact. That is just a reminder that contrary to the rumors, we do not receive any tax exemptions. We have more than doubled the appraised value of that building, and since we have renovated and repurposed it from the original use of a hotel, pub, liquor store. There are now two very successful commercial tenants, our CGC offices, a retail store, a commercial kitchen that is used by dozens of value-added processors, farmers, and is home to countless cooking programs. And as well, there are 22 residents who are enjoying living in such an amazing downtown location that is affordable and safe. Everyone was and is so proud of this renovation and rejuvenation. And let I remind you again that the city awarded CGC with the Residential and Commercial Building Awards of Excellence just last year as a recognition of the amazing transformation that project did for downtown. That's not an annual award, as I understand. It hadn't been awarded in 3 years, and I noticed that there was no nomination this year. That makes it extra meaningful for us. CGC also won the Real Estate Foundation of BC's Provincial Land Award in 2014 for the building, recognition that outshone several high-profile building projects in BC. This award brought significant recognition not only to CGC, but to Duncan as well, as the home of a very innovative and successful social purpose real estate project. CGC has enjoyed partnering with the city on so many initiatives, and we worked very well with a variety of staff members, writing each other letters of support, writing joint grant applications, working together in such an inspiring collaboration that we've shared with many organizations. This is a very small town, and it's been a very rewarding experience working with staff and council. This has been a far-reaching partnership between staff and council that we have boasted to many communities. CGC has partnered with the city specifically on numerous initiatives, some of which we have not received any direct funding for, and many at the initiation of city staff and council. Some of these include in May 2010, Solar Days. We did not receive any funding, but we led the planning committee, organized the day in Charles Huey Park, including booths, activities, media releases, posters, promotion, etc. In June 2010, we wrote the LEARN grant, Learning Initiatives for Rural and Northern Communities. In partnership with the city, no funding was directly given to CGC to organize two very large events, grant writing and the accessibility workshop. Over 80 people came to the grant writing workshop, and CGC planned the entire event, registration, made the food, etc. In 2010 to 2014, we worked on the urban forest strategy. We were asked by the city planner to help consult on this project, and we were consulted by contractors for development of the original strategy. Then CGC was asked by city staff to finalize the project in 2015, including consultation, training, public outreach, promotion, and developing a final homeowner's guide to the urban forest management, and we paid $14,990 for that. In May 2011 and 2012, the Chickens in the Backyard program started. We did not receive any funding. We were requested by the planner, James Van Hebert, to assist with drafting bylaw, organizing public open houses, and conducting surveys. October 2011, we were asked by a previous staff member to help develop a coloring book for children on anti-idling. I found it the other day, and I'm pretty proud of it, actually. Alyssa wrote over there. I think she was 17 at the time.
Okay. Judy, I'm just going to have to remind you that delegations are 10 minutes, so you're just about there now.
Okay,
so
I might need an extra minute.
Thank you. Okay.
May 2012 to 16, I was on the Environment Commission of the city. That's a volunteer position. In May 2012, Intercultural Day, Councillor Jackson asked CGC to organize an event focusing on a variety of cultural foods in City Square. We completed all the organization, food, promotion, etc. We were paid $1,000 for that event, of which $400 was for staff time. In May 2012 to 16, the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, we were a volunteer member of the steering committee, hosting workshops at our boardroom, reviewing action items, and helping to steer implementation of the plan through the Environment Commission. October 2012, through the Centennial Grant, we received $5,850 for the Phoenix Project Demonstration Garden. 2013 and 14, we assisted the staff with the GE free purchasing policy. We worked with the staff and Environment Commission to develop a policy which is the direct result of the work and action items identified in the ICSP and the AVICC resolutions and the UBCM resolutions. I won't read the whole thing. But the City of Duncan was the first municipality to adopt a GE free purchasing policy, a policy that has been discussed and modeled by many other municipalities throughout BC, and you led the charge and should be very proud of that accomplishment. So our intention of coming here today is to remind you of all the strong and long-standing partnerships the City of Duncan and CGC has formed over the past 10 years. We have both benefited greatly from this working together partnership. Collaboration between individuals, organizations, and all level governments really are the foundation for a truly healthy community. Having said that, we do realize that policies change, priorities change, councils change, staffs changed. But since 2013, during the annual grant aid meeting, CGC's funding was not deliberated or at risk. We were advised by city staff that council is making a push to discontinue providing funding for operations for organizations, as council's policy states that grants are intended to be one-time only. And we understand that. But as far as we knew, we had moved away from the one-time granting process to become a budget line item for providing such a valued service to the members of this community. I know how difficult budgeting is. I understand the grant and aid process. I have probably sat through more grant and aid meetings than all of you put together. I have sat through the cities, North Cowichan's, CBRD grant meetings, and for the past 3 years, I've been on the BC Regional Committee for the Federal New Horizons grant funding, and this past October, we awarded $4.8 million to thousands of organizations across BC. So I understand this process. I know it's difficult. I am sworn to secrecy, but I know there's money coming in March, but you can't ask me. It's not just about the money. As a nonprofit, we know what it's like being on the edge, and that's okay. It's the nature of the beast and not for the weak of heart. But more so, this is about the partnership that we have worked so hard together to build. That has made this community a better place. I continuously brag to other executive directors and other organizations in other communities about how proud we have been to have had such a close working relationship with City. So in closing, I respectfully ask that you reconsider the decision to not deny CGC our funding this year, and that you continue to award the $4,000 we've been receiving for the past several years, As collaborated by all the support letters you've seen, there are many in this community who think that it's taxpayers' money very well spent to have our parks safer, our downtown core more vibrant, and our community more vibrant, resilient, and healthy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council at all with respect to the delegation? No? Okay, thank you very much. Now, the item with respect to that is a little further down on the agenda. I don't think it'd take too long to get there, so rather, we could move it up, but I think it's best to just put where it is on the agenda. So if you can be here for a little longer, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, we move on to report of the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Dvertai. You've handed out your report, but if you just touch on some of the highlights.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. I know you have a long agenda today. The 2nd Street Capital Project, all the underground infrastructure is now complete. However, a number of deficiencies were discovered during a review prior to paving, and those deficiencies will need to be rectified before we switch over the sewer and storm systems prior to doing the paving. Both the deficiency work and paving will have to wait until the weather improves, so obviously we'll be getting to that in the new year. The Canada Avenue Government Street intersection upgrades. The report to Council has been delayed because Stantec was asked to prioritize the designs and the draft drawings for the Canada Avenue lighting and boulevard and sidewalk grading. Staff intend to present a final report to the February 6th committee meeting. Just an update on 15 Canada and those sidewalk improvements in that area. The developer will be constructing the curb and sidewalk based on the alignment in the development permit for 15 Canada. The city will temporarily be filling the area between the new curb and the old curb with a rain garden until final decisions on the intersection redesign are complete. Designs will allow for the future construction of a right turn lane onto Government Street, or allow us to leave that area as a boulevard or a rain garden if that is what is ultimately decided through that by council after that report in February. The Market Moss parking lot, the paving and tree removal are now complete, but we're also waiting for the weather to improve before we flip the line painting and the access. And lastly, maybe I'll touch on the amalgamation study. The process is well underway. We have also issued the RFP for the amalgamation study itself. It's on tonight's agenda, so it has not yet been issued. Sorry, my apologies on that. The invitations, however, to Citizens Assembly itself has been mailed to 10,000 households, and responses are requested by January 9th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any questions can be held for a question period at the end. So we move on to reports of staff, and we've got item 7.1, which is Development Permit 2015-18, 135 Kenneth Street. And there is a motion here, and what I'll do is ask for a mover and seconder on the motion. I'll just read it out briefly, and then we'll have Mr. Patey do a presentation. The council approves the proposed development permit, DP 2015-18, for construction of a two-story mixed-use building located at 135 Kenneth Street, and that council approve the following conditions of development permit, DP 2015-18, to be met prior to the issuance of a building permit for the purposes for the proposed development. Subject to a rainwater management plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works and Development Services, provision of security deposit of 125% proposed hard and soft landscaping costs, provision of an off-site works and services in accordance with the Engineer of Public Works Department requires, including sidewalk improvements to eliminate vehicular access from Kenneth Street, and confirmation of an easement agreement to allow for vehicular access only to the rear of the property. Is there a mover and a second for that motion at this point? Moved. Seconder? Okay, thank you. Mr. Patey, if you would like to run through this development permit.
Thank you, Chair. This development permit is for a two-story mixed-use commercial building, very close to here, actually, just about 45 meters directly down Kenneth Street. It's an open lot currently at the moment without any development on it. It did previously have a building on it, but that building has been gone some time. Here we see, if you're looking in the image here, you can see City Hall, where we are now. Just down the street, this is actually the open site subject property in question. I have imposed the actual site plan onto the property to give you an idea of the scale of the development. This area that you can kind of make out here is the location of the building. This is the proposed drive aisle with a parking lot to the rear of the parcel. This parcel is fairly average size, 673 square meters in area, approximately 18 meters of frontage, 36 meters of depth, so a fairly average size lot for the downtown. Here we get a better idea of the site plan. You can see the proposed drive aisle. This drive aisle is approximately 5.5 meters, and this area shows kind of some cobble hasher area. And this building pushed all the way to the zero lot line on the west side of the property. The building actually has a bit of an overhang in the second story. The bottom story of the building, I should add, is all commercial. There's 3 commercial rental units on the lower portion of the building with 3 residential units in the upper portion of the building. Those residential units are accessed from the side of the building, from the inside of this drive aisle. The 2 CRUs, the commercial rental units, are accessed from Kenneth Street along the frontage here, and an additional commercial rental unit in the back of the building is accessed via a doorway just to the rear of the site and from this proposed parking lot. The upper story overhangs the lower story by approximately 1.07 meters to provide a little bit of overhang and sense of enclosure to the street. And I'll show you as we move along into elevations. Here we see a proposed site plan. This site doesn't really afford much for landscaping. However, there is a small strip of landscaping proposed along the edge of the building to kind of greenify that edge of the building, as well as a strip of landscaping along the rear and behind this small storage structure, which is meant to house garbage receptacle and also provide storage for the tenants in the upper portion of this building. Here we see the elevations. This is as it would appear, the top left-hand corner from Kenneth Street. You can see the 2 CRUs in the bottom, each with their own individual accesses, the residential units with the balconies overhanging by 1.07 meters, overhanging above the lower story. It adds both horizontal articulation as well. This center portion is bumped out slightly to create vertical articulation in front of the building to give it some visual interest. Here we see, this is the rear elevation, and this is a rear access door, originally access. The rear CRU is accessed by, I believe, by this door. These 3 doors here are individual accesses to the 3 residential units in the upper story. And this, of course, is what you would see walking on the drive aisle. And this, of course, brick wall that abuts immediately to the building to the west. Here we see a bit of a blow-up to demonstrate the materials used in the building. Some board and batten, concrete fiber lap siding, hardy plank, and hardy panel. Nice use of glass for the upper balconies, and a nice sort of complementary kind of color set for the total building. And this area shows the raceway area for the proposed signage. Now here's just an example of the layout of the lower floor. You can see the CRU, these commercial rental units in the lower story, and the one in the rear, and you see the 3 individual accesses to the residential units in the middle, and that's where the drive aisle would be, up along that north end of this, in this image. And here it's a bit of a difficult to tease out image, but you can see the residential unit clearly demarcated by this black line here, shows the one single bedroom unit. This would be facing the southeast, another unit here, southwest, given that this is Kenneth Street, and then here's the rear facing unit that would actually face onto the parking lot. And I'll add some natural surveillance onto the parking lot as well, so it doesn't become dead space at the rear of this site. And here's just an image of the storage facility, the rear of the site, and to house personal effects for the tenants of the upstairs units. Now, the Design Advisory Panel did review this application and passed the following motion. That they support the development permit application presented on November 28th, providing the applicant explore the opportunity to provide vehicle access to the proposed parking lot at the rear of the site through the existing easement on Ingram Street between 126 Ingram and 148 Ingram, and provide pedestrian-only access to the parking lot from Kenneth Street. Now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the opening slide, and I should have put another slide in here. You can see this being the proposed site, this is Telus building, and this is the green door. there currently is a walkway between these two buildings that is used for both vehicular and pedestrian access. There is an easement, a reciprocal easement, to maintain in perpetuity that access for both of these properties. Now, it's undetermined whether or not that easement provides access to the rear of this site, but ideally, Kenneth Street would have a continual building frontage with no driveways along the entirety of Kenneth, save for perhaps a mid-block connection to connect this walkway with this walkway. And so it has been proposed and supported by the advisory design panel that the developer investigate the potential for considering access, vehicular access, only to the rear of this site, only through this easement, and save this proposed driveway access for pedestrian access only, so that we get a pedestrian through-block, mid-block connection that forces cars into the already existing driveway off of Ingram Street to access the rear parking lot. So moving forward back to the recommendation. This is the recommendation before council that you've already read.
Okay. Is there any questions of Mr. Peavy? Councillor Jackson?
Yes, I think, thank you. I think we need to do some more work on this. It's a very nice building. It's a very modern-looking building. But this building is on the wrong side of the lot. Anybody in their right minds would realize that you are blocking 9 windows on the Volume 1 building, some of which may, and I'm not familiar with the inside of the Volume 1 building, but they may actually be egress windows if there was a fire in the bookstore below, that may be the only way they would be able to get out, and they would be like facing a wall right in front of them. So that's the number one reason that I am. I understand that there's some concern about the cost burying the transformer that's on that great ugly telephone pole that's smack dab in the middle of the sidewalk. I would like staff to have an opportunity to talk to the owner and the developer, maybe around development cost charges, something like that, where we could work on having that service buried. Because not only would the streetscape be better and safer and more accessible, but also the parking area would work better. If the whole building were flipped to the other side, I know for a fact that TELUS and the Green Door will not permit access. They would be willing perhaps to put their bollards back 5, 8 feet or something like that. So if the parking were there, then they would be able to back out. Right now, if there were trucks or commercial trucks or anybody coming into that back to get the garbage or the recycling or what have you, they would have to be backing out down that narrow little driveway there out onto Kenneth Street. So if the developer decides to lose the 4 feet of sidewalk on the back, which nobody would use anyway, then the building could actually be set back off of Kenneth Street 4 more feet, which would provide for more landscaping opportunities on the Kenneth Street side. I think that if we just spend a little bit more time here talking about other opportunities, moving the building back to the east side of the property, that this would be an excellent development and a really great addition to Kenneth Street. And but the way it is right now, it's going to create more problems than it's going to resolve, in my opinion. So I think that's pretty much all I had to say. Thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. Patey, is this the developer of the thing?
It is.
I believe it's okay that a developer be able to answer those questions in this circumstance. So,
yeah.
yes, what is your name?
This gentleman's name is Bob Price.
Oh, Mr. Price, how are you? Thank you.
Hi, yes, it's Bob Price. I'm one of the owners of Price's Alarms who's doing this development. I'd just like to point out that in our original proposal, we did have the building on the other side of the lot, and in consultation with Hydro, it was exactly their recommendation that we redesign it to the east side of the lot because of the transformer issue. There's a couple of things I would point out as well, was mentioned that there are no other driveways on Kenneth Street. That's not quite correct, because the bookstore beside us actually has a driveway going into the rear of their property. The other difficulty we have is, some of you may recall that there was an old building on this lot that we demolished a few years ago because it was an eyesore and it was used by homeless people. Traditionally, there's always been a driveway on that lot for as long as one can remember. And one of the problems we have with the rear access is what we would like to do, ideally, we would like to continue the access off of Kenneth Street, which we've always had in the past when we were located in that old building. And ideally, if TELUS and the Green Door can agree to give us an easement, then we would like to be able to exit out that way. So we basically drive in and drive out. Failing them granting us an easement, then we would be forced to drive in, turn around, and then drive back out.
Okay. Any questions, additional questions from Mr. Price?
Just, my understanding was that it wasn't a recommendation from Hydro, it was just a suggestion in order that you wouldn't have to go to the cost of burying it. And I'm saying that the staff could possibly work with you to look at other options around the cost of burying that transformer so that perhaps you would not have to bear the whole cost, moving the building back to the side that you originally had planned. And that I feel that if that were to happen, it would just be a far better development. And I want to congratulate you on the design. I had seen the original design and I liked it very much, but I also like this one very much. So,
whether the building, I mean, and certainly we're open to entertaining that because that's the way that it was originally drawn. There was the one objection that we received when we originally had the building on the east side of the lot, was there was a large expanse of solid wall, which was somewhat objectionable, even though we did try and bring it up. I think our main concern at this point, and it's received from a discussion, is the ability to be able to drive in and be able to drive and either drive out or drive in and carry through to Ingram Street.
Okay.
So whether the building's on either side of the lot, there's still that issue that needs resolving.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bruce, did you?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the look of the building. I too think the building should be flipped back to the other side. I'd like to encourage staff to work with the developer to see if we can offset some of those costs of that hydro pole for you. I think it's in the city's interest to get rid of that hydro pole that's on Kenneth Street. I also think the big plus, if we look down the way a little bit, if you were inclined this way, Mr. Price, is the farmer's market could maybe tie in from the back side through the lane that exists there now, down your new driveway, back out onto Kenneth. So we have a full loop for the farmer's market in the future. And that would interest me to see the building back the way you originally had it, so the farmer's market could expand in a loop fashion if you were inclined that way.
We're certainly amenable to working in that direction. In fact, that was one of the problems when it was brought up that we could do both ingress and egress through that lane, was the fact that that lane is not open during the farmer's market. That was another.
Any further questions from council? Okay, Councillor Duncan and Councillor Staples.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how much room there would be between the Volume 1 building and that wall.
It would be minimal. 6 inches, 12 inches. It'd be very tight.
So there really is no way for someone to actually get out of those windows if there was a fire.
Those windows are not egress windows. They're very small windows.
Okay. And so when Hydro was talking to you about moving the power, did they give you any idea if there was going to be additional costs for you?
Well, I guess it's a very complex situation because they need to get permission or an easement from the city. They were going to put the hydro transformer across the street on city property and whatever that entails. And of course, they never told us what the expense would be. It sounded like it was something that was going to be in the future just because of I guess, whatever has to happen between Hydro and the city to make that happen.
Councillor Steebles?
So this is very reflective of the discussion that was had at the ADP when this application was being reviewed. And what would be the process from this point to staff, I guess Peter, or Dave, I'm not sure who I would ask. What would be the process from this point if staff were to review this and try to work with Hydro and work with Mr. Price to see if this could potentially come to fruition?
Excuse me, Your Worship. Well, if council's amenable to some form, I guess, including some form of hydro beautification on Kenneth Street in the short term that would enable or facilitate Mr. Price to move the building back to where he originally wanted to put it, then that's something you could ask us to explore, within the next month and report back, have some discussions with Mr. Price as to whether that's feasible. It's separate and apart from the discussion of the access itself from the lane versus from Kenneth Street. They can be dealt with separately. Also asks us to do some further discussions with Mr. Price because it doesn't sound like what the recommendation is saying is what Mr. Price would like to see happen.
Okay.
I just further to that.
Up, yes.
So I think both of those things would have to happen at the same time, but also too, is this something that Mr. Price is open to looking at moving the building back to where it originally was? I know you had talked about it at the ADP as well, but I would just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, originally that was our idea, so we're not opposed to. I've been to the designer and we've flipped it and flipped it and flipped it. But, I mean, that's we're not opposed to that. I would like to know what the position is on the driveway, because I hear different things there. As I say, we would, if we can have ingress from Kenneth Street, and if the other participants, namely Talus and Green Door, are willing to provide an easement, an egress out through Ingram State, then we would be quite happy to investigate moving the building back to the east side. Or as long as we can have...
Councillor Jackson?
I would like to do a motion to refer this back to staff, to work with the neighbors, to work with the developer and Mr. Price to come up with mutually agreeable way of making this possible, moving it back to the east side of the building. The parking will be better. I just think it's going to be, the building would be possibly be able to be set back. I just think it will just make it a far better development. And so I would like to refer this back to staff.
Okay, before I take that motion, just to allow other people,
Oh,
if
certainly.
they have other questions, or
fine.
is anyone else that has a question of Mr. Price or Mr. Pate?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I do have a question, though, I would like to ask. So, one thing I just noticing, and I'm not sure if the ADP commented on it, but the accesses and egresses for the suites as well as the commercial rental unit towards the back are on the egress. So whether the building is west or east, is there enough room for accommodating the people who will obviously be walking? So I'm just wondering about the conflict, vehicular conflict with pedestrians in that space, because with the other driveways that are on Kenneth Street, that's not the case. There is no access or egress from that drive lane, either with the larger building down Kenneth Street or the Volume 1 building. So is there enough room there? Maybe Mr. Patey can technically answer that question.
I believe, I'm trying to recall, I believe it's 18 feet, is that correct? The answer is yes. I believe it's 18 feet wide.
Okay. So, but there is accommodation for walking pathway for people? Okay.
There's a 4-foot pathway shown on the plans, yes.
Okay, and so the motion is to refer it back to staff. So is there was a seconder for the motion already, moved and seconded. Any question on that? Councillor Duncan?
So I just, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make sure that all the costs around the hydro changes are brought forward right at the start here so that we know what we're talking about. I want to make sure that we know exactly what bill is going to be. If we do have to do, because the other Kenneth Street had to do similar across the street thing. So really, I think it's important that we know exactly what we're talking about in the way of dollars for the hydro before we get too far into this.
Well, for clarification, I think the developer paid the cost of that particular work, so the city did make a contribution. We've made contributions with respect to Canada Avenue, where we had a partnership in through the development permit and rezoning to fund through with Hydro, the developer and the city. So we would have to consider carefully from a financial and others perspective as to what if there was a cost or even a role for the city in that particular part of it. So I guess the motion is to refer to staff and do we need to provide any further direction to staff possibly?
I'd just like a little clarification on the driveway portion. And to make it clear, we're prepared to move the building, if it's feasible, to the east side of the lot rather than the west side of the lot. But we would like to know that we can have access and egress from Kenneth Street.
From Kenneth Street. I'm not certain that because we're referring this and we're not actually making a decision. I mean, it might be a little bit challenging for you to get that commitment from council at this moment without hearing back from staff with respect to all these other issues. So I'll ask Mr. Patey would like to answer a question here if you could. Mr. Patey, if you could answer that, please.
If I could just answer your previous question, this distance between the proposed building and the west property line of this building, or east property line of this one, is 5.5 meters. Now, typically a two-way drive aisle is 6.7 meters to accommodate a two-way traffic in the drive aisle. So at best, this would constitute one-way traffic. If you also want to share the space with the pedestrian access, which is typically 1 meter to 1.5 meters of surfaced space, and typically delineated by the use of pavers or some other type of paver material to separate those two uses, pedestrian versus the vehicular traffic. This does not meet the criteria for a two-way drive aisle.
Right.
And this parking lot does not meet, other than the dimensions of the parking spaces themselves, does not in any way meet the dimensional requirements for a parking lot. It's questionable about whether or not this a car parked in this space would have to do a multi-point turn, and it certainly is possible. And these two spaces are certainly much easier to pull in and out of. But just to be clear, this doesn't really meet the requirements for a two-way drive aisle.
With that said, Your Worship, the fact that the developer is putting parking on the property is not a requirement of the development either. They're doing that at their own behest to ensure that the residents, with the intent of the residents having parking. However, if in this current design, and I assume that's why Mr. Price wouldn't want to have this be the design, like a driveway right the way through and out onto Ingram be the method of choice if the building doesn't get moved, is because you effectively have no parking in order to allow that to happen. As you can see, you only left with one space. So without flipping the building, it makes not
at this point, the motion from council is to refer it back to staff and the developer, and that's the motion we have on the floor. To give any particular commitment to any part of that until we hear that report back, I think is a bit premature. If you can appreciate that, Mr. Price. Okay.
I agree, Your Worship. I would like to caution, though, that relating to Councillor Duncan's question regarding the cost, that if you're asking staff to go and meet with the developer about the potential for undergrounding the power at the city's, I assume at the city's cost as a form of beautification to get rid of the transformers, with the intent to facilitate the building on the side of the property that you would rather. That would be at the city's cost, and that would probably run in the neighborhood of 30 to 50,000 in order to do that. As it stands, Mr. Price could build the property as it stands. It's not meeting any of the guidelines as currently designed, but certainly there's lots of
Well,
benefit
we have
to
input
moving,
here from
so.
council with respect to that, so then that'll be part of the discussion, I don't know, do you believe you need any more direction in the referral motion?
Only whether it gets passed as a referral or not.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to call the question, all those in favor of the referral back to staff, and those opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Patey. So we move on to item 7.2, which is development permit 2016-15, 461 Trans-Canada Highway. The council approved the proposed development permit DP 2016-15 for the renovations to an existing auto dealership located at 461 Trans-Canada Highway. And the motion moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Mr. Patey, would you like just to go over to the highlights of this project, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. This project is at 461 Trans-Canada Highway. It's for the Nissan auto dealership. This building currently already exists and has existed up to this point as a Fiat dealership. Most of us are familiar with the corner of Coronation and Island Highway. This parcel is a regular shaped parcel behind this weirdly shaped corner parcel. So this parcel here has access, or not access actually, it has frontage on Island Highway. This access has been cut off. There's no longer an access at that point. So frontage on Island Highway, and hence the address on Island Highway. Frontage on Coronation, also frontage on St. Julian?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So this building in its current footprint is primarily going to remain unchanged for the purposes of, but we'll be going through a renovation for purposes of identifying it as the new Nissan dealership for St. Duncan. Here you see the preliminary site plan. Now, this building was built with, a development permit previously, and this landscaping was all installed as part of that development permit. So this development permit doesn't include landscaping at this point because it's anticipated that this is sufficient amount of landscaping for the proposed renovation. You can see here, I actually did an A/B image. This is the proposed image of the new Nissan dealership, and I'm going to flip forward to show its current state. You can see, some the sort of older kind of cladding on the building. This kind of horizontal kind of cladding on this front piece of the building here, as well as over this porte cochere. The large massing of the Fiat, this architectural detail, which is kind of dominant on the whole sort of presentation of the building. I'll go back to the previous image. Here we show the new version with aluminum cladding on the front of the building to give it kind of modernize the look a little bit, fully enclose the porte cochere area of the building. New freestanding signage is proposed throughout the site. This sign bylaw allows for freestanding signage, one for every frontage. So they're proposing a freestanding sign for Coronation at the entranceway, which is right here, as well as one small freestanding sign at 461, or the frontage on Island Highway. You can see that by removing that big massive Fiat sort of frontage, that it opens up the amount of glazing in the front of the building to create a much more transparent look and a much more open and fresh kind of look. I'll move on. There again is what it currently is today. This is what Nissan is calling their tablet, which is intended to be a soft glowing red at nighttime in order to backlight the Nissan logo. So quite a dramatic kind of presentation to the street, and an upgrade essentially to materials around the building to refresh the building and just kind of update the building in and around the service bays, the upper band around the top of the building, and essentially that's primarily the proposal before us. Here you can see kind of some of the material changes, relatively unchanged except for materials just to modernize the building somewhat. And here's a presentation of actual materials used around the building, concrete block, and modern sort of colors and materiality to upgrade the building. And here's the sign program. These are fascia signs, which are to be placed on the building. This is the Nissan logo on that tablet portion, that architectural feature proposed on the building. And here we have assemblage of freestanding signs. This one in the top of the image is proposed out on the highway. Moving down, these are the two freestanding signs proposed on Coronation, one of which is a directional sign. That's this small sign here down in this corner. So the ADP reviewed this application on the 21st and made the following recommendation that they support it essentially as presented, but would like the applicant to use locally produced materials for this project. And the applicant has responded by stating they're working with their local contractor to develop a tendering list, procure both local trades and local products for use throughout the building. And the recommendation of council, which you've read.
Okay. So that was moved and seconded. Any questions, Mr. Patey? Councillor States?
I don't have a question other than that's the most excited I've ever heard someone presenting at an ADP meeting about a design. And I realized after it was because it was probably the marketing guy that presented the application. It wasn't the architect or anyone else. And
As a matter of fact,
was
the architect, Mr. Tom Dishlavoy, who's here tonight, presented the project via telephone call, and I used my pointer and kind of walked through the presentation with Tom.
Oh, was
so
that
we walked
you?
through the presentation
Okay.
together.
Because you were, honestly, that was the most, refreshing presentation at an ADP meeting. So thank you for that.
Okay, any further questions? I'm going to call the question on the motion then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We move to item 7.3, which is the building statistics for November, and a motion to receive for information. Moved, seconder. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So we move to item 7.4, which is the amalgamation study consultant RFP, and the council directs staff to issue the amalgamation study consultant RFP substantially in the form as attached to the December 19th, 2016 report of the Director of Finance. Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Just for context, the Citizens Assembly request for citizens to participate has gone out. There were 10,000 invitations sent out, and I know I've received a couple of phone calls for clarification, and the consultant has as well. So there are people who are very interested. So that's a good sign.
Can I just ask something about that?
Yes, Kim.
One of the things to clarify that people have been asking me is that people say that if they feel that they may not agree with amalgamation or may be all for it, that they don't feel that they can be neutral about it, and so they were worried about applying. Could you speak to that?
I would encourage anyone who has an interest at all to attend,
Yeah.
Whether they have strong pro or con feelings about it. It's an opportunity for everyone to learn about what each of the local governments do in total, and the Citizen Assembly consultant will be presenting quite a bit of information for the people who are on the panel, and with information they'll be able to make their decisions.
Is that something that we could post on our social media sites so that people understand that? Because I've been asked that by a number of people now. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I was asked a similar question, and I said, well, everybody has some bias, so if you're interested, it's important that if you really are interested that you apply, and so okay. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 7.5, which is the Advisory Committee on Disabilities Issues membership changes, and there is a motion there. Maybe Councillor Jackson, you'd like to make the motion? Okay. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on it? All in, Councillor Jackson?
All we're doing here is just basically.
Could you use your microphone, please?
Oh, beg your pardon. Thank you very much. Is just making the terms of reference reflect the reality of who is actually on the committee. With these committees, I was hoping that we could do something like that the membership would include people from this list of organizations, but not be limited to them. But apparently the law says, no, we have to be actually very specific about who sits on the committee. So this is just a little housekeeping item. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. Okay, it was moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Let's move to item 8.
I'm just going to step out again.
Yes,
do I have to read
let
it
me
first?
introduce
Okay.
the motion, and then you'd step out for conflict. So motion 8.11, the council deny the grant and aid for the Calgary Green community in the amount of $4,000 for the annual operations as funding for operations does not meet the criteria under the grants and aid policy or qualifies as a fee for service. So you could state your conflict, please.
So I have a contract with the Couch and Green community.
Now, this was the recommendation from the committee of the whole, this particular motion that's here. Councillor Jackson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a lot of problems with this. I completely support the Green community in every way and the work you do. I personally support you financially. Half of you on the board are my friends. This was a really hard budgeting process that we went through. A lot of things had come off the table. And it's become more and more apparent to me that there's a lot of people in the city of Duncan who live on fixed incomes. 50% of the private homes in the city of Duncan are occupied by senior single women on fixed incomes. So it was really tough when we were going through the budgeting. Things that we would normally fund without question came off the table or were slashed in half. I am continuously reminded by people when they phone me and they talk to me that when we do the budgeting, it's not my money that we're spending, it's their money. So I think that up until now, and continuing on, that we have been a marvelous partnership. But this is one of those years where CVRD budget is going up, the school budgets are going up, and I have to think about those 750 ladies who are living on fixed incomes in their houses. And, you know, I'm sorry I was not here at the last council meeting because I would have voted against the extra $6,000 for the visitor center. Now we're talking about $4,000 for Couch and Green community. That's $10,000. Something has to come off the table. I don't mind looking at this, but it means something has to come off the table. So this either has to go back, we either say no tonight, or in my opinion, this has to go back to committee of the whole, and we have to talk about what operational thing aren't we going to do? Because I'm not willing to raise our tax another % or part of a %, to change our minds again about something we had already decided. As I'm not unwilling to do it, but there's something that will have to come to the table if we're going to do this.
There is no motion on the floor at the moment, so
Right.
the motion on the agenda. Okay, seconder for that. Okay,
Yeah.
seconded. Now discussion.
Can you say that again?
No, God,
No,
no.
please.
I have to kill
Any
myself.
questions or discussion on this motion? Councillor Bell.
I would just like to agree with what you're saying. I wrote some notes here. As you were speaking, I was quite proud of the work that you guys did, even though I have nothing to do with it. But the partnerships, like you talked about, this is my second term, so I've been involved in a lot of those. I was on the Environment Committee. I'm aware of a lot of the participation that Green Community had in the in our whole. I can't remember the name now, but sorry. Yeah, the ICSP, and a lot of the forums that we had. I think you're actually a really good executive director. You probably have the strongest nonprofit in Duncan. I think the building being there was great, and that's why I think that you had all the exemptions that you did. It was to show our support in the project that you're doing. I think that hopefully all the grants that you have been getting, and the like the $14,000 to do the environment committee, there is an educational piece. The green community was the best component for that. So yeah, it's not a reflection of any of the work that the green community does, because the green community does a lot of good work, and there isn't anybody else in the Cowichan Valley that I think is doing the work that you're doing. You're the only agency that comes, and this is the strength of leadership, but comes and does the presentations every year. So we always feel like we're educated and informed all the time in what you're doing, where I know that takes a lot of time and effort just to do that. Whenever there's something on the table, you guys all show up, so you've got strong community commitment. So I agree with everything you said in your presentation and enjoy the presentations. The thing for me that I've had continuous issues with and voiced it every year, I've generally been outvoted, is it's very unusual for us to, for one, pay operational, and that's what's being cleaned up. We don't fund operational because it's a grant and aid. So we're basically, we have direct taxes, and for it to come out of a committee, that's even more unusual. So it's like a housekeeping. You've been caught up in the housekeeping, because I'm not sure why that kept going. But for those reasons is why. There's no other reasons. We don't fund operational, and we don't fund out of committees. We don't do grant and aids out of committees. So anyways, thank you for the work that you do.
Okay, I'm going to, Councillor Horgan.
I'm going to go the other way, I'm afraid. I think that listening to your presentation tonight really changed my mind, I must admit. I think that in the past, I think you're a huge organisation. I think you're a very well-run organisation, and I think that if I was looking for a general manager, I'd be chasing you, because you do a wonderful job. And I forgot to turn my phone off tonight. Excuse me. But I think that we should give you the same consideration as we gave to the Chamber of Commerce. And in my mind, that you should have been given some notice of change of amount. At least give you, tell you this year, this is the last one you're going to get, or we're going to review it a little more thoroughly next year. So I'm not sure if it's going to make a difference, but I'm going to vote in favour of giving you your $4,000.
Okay. So I'm also not going to support this motion, which I didn't support at committee of the whole. I'm a little confused myself by the categorization that this was a grant and aid. I mean, we have a number of line budget items which support a number of groups like the Historic Society and other things that we do, which we believe city gets service for with respect to the general work they do. I don't have to add to the accolades. Congratulations on the SE Catalyst, of course, by the way, as well. You are not only locally recognized, but provincially and nationally, and probably will become internationally recognized. I think your contributions directly to the citizens of the city are very direct. The city really enjoys a great deal of benefit from having your nonprofit organization and all the kinds of work that you do, and very focused on city public property, which to enhance both its safety, its use, food security for people who need it, and they are all in the core area. As far as budget goes, when we had looked at all of these, this was not an additional budget item. It was already included in the budget figures we had in front of us. So there was some cutting from existing funding. We were actually drawing down our funding a little bit from the previous year. So it wasn't actually necessary. I think that the value for money here is multiple fold. So I just give you my opinion on just exactly how you serve, and I believe there isn't another organization that serves the city more directly than Cowichan Green Community. So on that, I will be voting against the motion. Is there any other further discussion? Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Your Worship. And all I can say to Julie and all the hard workers over there is you've done a great job. But I also have to echo what Councillor Jackson has said. Where do we find the money? I did note looking over the paperwork that the CGC provides a $4,800 grant in aid to the Cowichan Valley Co-op Marketplace. So I'm questioning, if you're able to provide a $4,800 grant in aid, why do you need our money? But the bottom line being is that I don't think we can go back and review all those grants and aids and start chopping money from all the other organizations. So I'm afraid I will have to vote to deny the funding.
Okay, is there any further discussion? I'm called a question on, is it a new?
The only thing that I would be voting to deny, but I would be willing to look at this again if it were referred to the committee of the whole with a request to staff about what can we take off the table in order to accommodate the green community this year.
Well,
if you're willing to do that, then
well, we're going to have a whole number of, there's still other budget sessions coming forward, so we'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about the overall budget, which doesn't actually get finally adopted until our five-year financial plan. So we've adopted a provisional budget, but we're waiting for other information. So I don't know that it necessarily needs to be referred directly, but we're dealing with a motion right now to deny, so I'm going to call the question on that motion.
May I just say that this is a group who has specifically come back to specifically appeal, so I want to specifically address their appeal. If I could make a motion to refer. If that fails, then I will be voting to
Well, a
deny.
motion to refer in advance of the motion, because you didn't speak of it that way, you spoke of it after the motion was made, because the motion on the floor was to deny, and you said you were going to go for that, and then, so if I understand, you're making a motion to refer, so I need a seconder for that motion to refer, and that overrides the original motion. Is there a seconder for the referral? Doesn't appear to be.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I just clarify, you said what's coming back? You said shelter's coming back?
But we still have budget approvals to do going forward. We're waiting for additional information with respect to the census data, which is coming in February, and other things before we approve budget. So changes to budget will still be available to council going forward. Okay, so I'm calling the question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to deny? And those opposed? Councillor Horgan and Mayor Kent opposed. Thank you. So we move to, if we could have Councillor Staples return, please. Oh, she does have comment for this one as well. Okay. So I'll just, we'll just wait a moment or two until everybody exits.
She might be showing the others out too.
I think she was talking to somebody else.
Here we go to motion 812, which is the Council Intercultural Immigrant Aid Society. The council award grant and aid to the Council Intercultural and Immigrant Aid Society in the amount of $1,000 to go towards refugee support program.
So moved.
Is there a seconder? Second. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Hmm?
Was this a new one?
Making sure the page stopped.
No.
Oh, there's another one here,
No, we denied the
8.13,
next
which is also the Council Immigrant, Intercultural Immigrant Society. The motion is that council deny the Council Intercultural and Immigrant Aid Society's request for grant and aid in the amount of $1,000 to be used for public awareness campaign related to Syrian refugees.
So moved.
Second, okay. Any discussion on this one? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Mark, Councillor Horgan, and Kent opposed. Thank you. We're going to move to 8.2 as soon as we get Councillor Staples back. Councillor Horgan, you are the chair, or you are representing the Totem Committee? I don't know who is Totem.
Sorry, yes.
I'm on Totem.
Okay,
So are you.
yeah. So we're going to move, all right. So can we just go to item 8.2? So we've got this is the December 1st Tourism Committee recommendation. So I'll have the Chair of Tourism or Totem Committee who would like to go and provide these two motions. Council, please.
You go ahead, you can pronounce that word a lot better than I.
Okay.
That's not fair. I can't. Sesquicentennial. That the Sesquicentennial Totem Manager be directed to consult with Couch and Tribes on the information that will be included on the signage for the do we really need to have that every time for the totem pole? Are these going to be done as separate motions?
Okay, they can be done together.
Okay, the tourism couch and vacation guide. The council support allocating up to $3,800 from the 2017 Tourism Committee budget to advertise in the Tourism Couch and Vacation Guide in 2017, and the council support allocating up to $1,000 from the 2017 Tourism Committee budget to have Hot House Marketing redesign the Tourism Couch and Vacation Guide advertisement using the new marketing graphics.
Okay, so there's two separate motions. Anyone want anyone separated?
No, I'll second the both.
Second both, okay. Any discussion? No? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so item 9.1, we move to bylaws. We've got bylaw 3134.02, financial plan amendment bylaw for adoption. So we had the first three readings in our last council meeting.
So moved.
Moved. Seconder? Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any questions, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And we have 9.2, which is bylaw 3155, 2016, fees and charges amendment bylaw for adoption.
So
Moved and seconded. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So we move to correspondence. Item 10.1, we've got proclamation from Kinsman and Kinnet's Day, and that council proclaimed February 20th, 2017, Kinsman and Kinnet's Day in the city of Duncan.
So moved.
Okay, moved. Seconder?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have item 10.2, a request from Heather Kay, Coordinator, Counter and Green Community, requesting that the city place 1.5 to 3-inch ad in the Buy Local, Buy Fresh Couch and Farm Map Guide at a cost of $325 plus GST. And note that should council approve, placement of the ad funds would come from the Environment Committee budget, and I would imagine Councillor
would have to
Staples-
go again.
Yes, we'll have to
It
go.
would be good. This is if we could put them all together, the three from the same place.
We're
Thank
going
you.
to count the treats in there too.
Yeah.
Every time she comes back.
I know.
there's missing
He's back with cookies.
chocolate in her teeth.
Don't eat all the marzipan,
There was that looking in marzipan.
isn't it?
Okay,
move the
order please. Thank you. Could we have a motion or not?
I move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? No seconder? Okay. So there's no
Really?
seconder for that motion, so it will just sit.
I would second it, 'cause I'd like to find out something about it, other than what's here. Like, is there anyone else from the Environment Committee that can tell us something about this?
Well, just, okay, so we didn't, if you're going to second motion, which is,
Second, because I can't get the
There's not-
information
okay.
without it, so.
Councillor Jackson?
We've done this for a number of years, and I completely support it. They come up with a map of the Cowichan Valley and all the maps where you can buy local food, from farm gates and farm stores and so on. In order to pay for the map, they have advertising all, on the back and all around the outside. And for the last, I don't know how many years.
It's been many years.
Many years. We've paid for a small ad on the side, just giving them our support to be able to produce this map, which is, I don't even think they charge for it. Yeah, so I think it is, I think it's a valuable thing, and I would like to show my support for them for this small amount of money, and we can certainly afford to do it out of the Environment Committee budget.
Councillor Horgan?
Yeah, it'd be very nice if Councillor Jackson was around when I was paying, my company was paying for these kind of ads. I don't support this one bit. That I don't think the city should be paying for somebody else's advertising. I don't think it's appropriate at all.
Any further discussion? Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that the ad does reflect our commitment with our food charter. And, you know, we've passed a bylaw. We've said we've got a policy on a food charter. Now it's time to put our money where our mouths are. You know, we want to keep local foods. We want to keep the market going. We want to keep people doing, I you would call it foodie tourism. And so, yeah, this isn't a lot of money to remind people that we do have a food charter here and we have a great local food economy. So I will be voting in favor.
Any further discussion? I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bruce and Councillor Horgan opposed. Okay, if we get Councillor Staples back. So the next item on the agenda is a letter from the Duncan County Festival Society just confirming July 15th, 2017 as the date for the Grand Parade. So that's still going ahead on that day. I don't believe it needs any action. Just I don't even think we need to do it. We've received it. Councillor. Well, the fact that it's on the agenda, it's already received. So it doesn't, you don't actually have a, I don't believe in motions to receive and file. It's been received. I'm not taking the motion. It's already received on the agenda, so it's recorded. Thank you.
It is a little bit redundant to receive this for information. As you say, on the agenda, it's now part of the public record.
Yes. Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Just a question, doesn't give us a lot of information here. I don't suppose that the Downtown Duncan Business Improvement Area Society has decided to have their Duncan Day on that day, or have they?
Well, they did this year, so
Yeah.
that was the intent. I'm sure that there'll be all the planning work that goes into it, which
Yeah.
should include the DBIA, will be going forward as it normally does. So,
Through you to
Mr.
Councillor
Divertai.
Staples, do you have any
Mr.
information?
Divertai, I just have you first.
I was just going to add that it is the same day as normal, so it's not
Yeah.
a change to the date
Okay.
from last year or
Third
previous
weekend,
year. So
third Saturday
they
of
would
July.
certainly be doing, I'm expecting they will be doing it at the same day, but perhaps Councillor Staples does.
Yeah, Councillor Staples, please.
There hasn't been any discussion one way or the other, so this looks like it would be at the same time that they normally plan it.
Yeah.
Great,
And I
thank
haven't
you.
heard anything.
Okay, so we'll move to reports of council and mayor. Are there any councillors wanting to report? Councillor Jackson. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Duncan? No. Okay. Okay, so I'll just give a very brief report. I had a very full month from the last council meeting. I have one item on the 21st meeting with the School District 79, which I'll report out in the closed meeting. December 1st, we had, I think, the second of a series of meetings with respect to the homelessness issue with School District 79, the District of North Cowichan, Cowichan Tribe, and the CVRD, the mayor's chair and CAOs initially. This was called by the School District 79 to discuss some of the particular issues that they were experiencing. We had another one as well on the 15th as a follow-up and invited a number of organizations involved to really kind of drill down to some of the possible gaps in information that the councils or the school district and others didn't have, and I think the outcome of that meeting was that there is some clear work being taken place to quantify and develop some good intelligence for people to move forward. So there was no action in those meetings, just simply gathering information, finding out if there was some possible assistance that we could provide to the people that are already doing yeoman's work in that area. On the fun side of things, I, along with Councillor Staples, attended the Campton Valley Seniors Organization Christmas dinner, which they did at 2 o'clock on Sunday the 4th. And that didn't go over completely well because some people showed at 11 like they normally would every year, and the doors weren't open yet. So, but it was really well attended. And they actually had a little new kind of skit I guess, improvisation skit with people who volunteered to do it, which was actually quite funny. It was so corny, it was funny. So that was kind of fun. Of course, we all were in attendance at the annual meeting, which I think was an excellent affair. Again, congratulations to all those recipients of the community awards. I went over the next morning to Vancouver, the 6th and 7th, and attended the CEO forum done by the Local Government Leadership Academy, and had 2 days of actually very good discussion. In fact, I think we were giving more than we were getting in terms of something that they're developing with the LGMA and also with the UBCM to come forward later this year with respect to some of the issues that were brought up there. There were 24 mayors and chairs from around the province, and it was very, very good discussion. I went to the fire department on the 14th, and for the first time we had 2 representatives from Cowichan tribes come there to hand out gift certificates. In fact, they put a little prize package together for each of the firemen, and they had a very good time. And I think they were extremely well received and never been in the fire hall before, so they were really impressed by the firemen, and sort of a game on the pool table that was very interesting. We kind of compared it to the bone game. It was that complicated, or it seemed complicated anyway. So that was very nice to see them. I went on Friday the 16th, I went to the CVRD to go to the preliminary economic development presentation by Amy Melmock, the new economic development officer and manager, and she presented an outline of where they were going with respect to the development of a strategy early coming in January, February of 2017, just to get a temperature of the board and other participants that were there. It was not a board meeting, it was just a workshop, and to get feedback from them as to whether she was heading in the correct direction. And I think it was a very positive meeting. There were a lot of really good discussion, and I think that the outcomes will be very useful for the board, and there was good support for the direction, so I think that was useful. And that concludes it from me, at least the thing I'm reporting on. So, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just to let you know what's been going on at the Island Savings Centre Commission. There's a library book drop on the outside of the building now, so you don't have to wait for the building to open in the morning. It means that people on their way to work could drive in, drop their books off, and that was just completed a couple of weeks ago. It's been a very busy fall at the theatre, lots of sold-out shows. They had Ziggy Marley and they had Natalie McMaster, and those were completely sold out. They're continuing to bring in some astonishing acts. Some of them they're hoping to bring in from Montreal and from Quebec that normally stay in Eastern Canada or go to Europe, but never really come to Western Canada. And now that it's called the Performing Arts Centre, and now that Kirsten Schrader is going to these events where she gets to meet all of these agents, we're about to see some remarkable shows coming to the Cowichan Valley. And the big news is that the National Aboriginal Hockey Championships, we won them between Island Savings Centre and Lake Cowichan, and they're going to be running here between May the 1st and May the 6th, and the final game will be here at the ice rink on the 6th of May. So we're going to get to see some incredible hockey played. And we didn't get our Canada 150 grant for the chiller for the ice rink, and we're waiting for an accessibility grant to redesign the horrible washrooms on the main floor. And as far as the CVRD goes, the big news is that we're going to be getting a new transit facility. Right now, where the transit office is and where the buses are stored, it's not owned by the CVRD, it's not owned by BC Transit, so they're looking to purchase a property and have enough bays to service our transit here up until like 2050. So plans are afoot. We're getting federal grants and provincial grants for that to help us do that too. So more news will be coming out in the ensuing months. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Staples.
I've decided that we need to extend all the festivities around Christmas for at least 3 months, because I had 4 turkey dinners in 4 days at 4 different meetings that I went to, and that's just a lot of turkey at the beginning of December. And it's wonderful, and there has literally been so many meetings this month already. It's like everyone tries to cram in, 6 to 8 weeks into 3. And so I really believe that we should just extend it. So perhaps we could make a motion at some point in time that, that we do that. But other than that, a lot of meetings, I won't report on all of them. I will talk a bit about the fire hall. If night, I got to watch from the outside because I was locked out of the building while they were giving gifts out, and it was about -6. It was very cold, but it looked really beautiful from the outside. Actually, it was kind of an interesting way to watch it. And I did get let in eventually. And then I did play some crazy game that I can't remember the name of it. It's from Ireland, and it's probably, in Ireland, it's probably a drinking game. It wasn't there. But one of the things that I want to say about all the places I went to, including and particularly the fire department, was to thank all the volunteers in our community, because, there's so many people that do so much here. And I would eat turkey every day if I had to, just to appreciate all of what they do. And it was nice to see Hilda and Sharon there from Couch and Tribes. It was, I don't know, it was just a whole different thing than it's been before. So I just want to thank staff too for thinking of doing that, because it really meant a lot to everyone, I think, that was there. So have a good holiday.
Okay, that concludes reports, so we'll have question period. So if there's any members of the public, and if you could just state your name and your place of residence as the municipality. You're not asking a question, you're going.
See you, Jerry.
No one else?
Merry
Okay.
Christmas.
Thank you. And any questions of respect to reports, staff reports? Councillor Staples.
My only question is there people starting to send back in their forms for the amalgamation studies, and what's the sort of numbers looking like?
Was it last week? I got an email from the consultants that said that they had over 100 people sign up already, and they were just starting a telephone campaign to remind people to send their envelopes in, so they were quite happy with the number that they've gotten back so far.
No, the feedback I got from people who have received them, they're extremely interested, which is great. And I've answered quite a few questions to one person, and they were disappointed because one of her daughters got one, and a friend got one, and neither of them were able to, even though they were interested, able to participate, but she couldn't actually grab it from someone else's address and use it. She did talk to the consultant about that, and he explained why, and she was quite satisfied after I'd spoken to her that it was okay. All right, so thank you very much. So we'll resolve to go and close meeting. Oh, do you? Sorry.
I beg your pardon. So they'll finish Second Street, so there's no really date. We just have to wait for spring to come. We just have to put it up with it for.
Hopefully not spring, but
Yeah.
once the snow and once we can, finish things off, there's a bit of work on the actual pipes, and then we'll do the curb work and pave, so.
Okay, and through your worship to Mr. DeVertai, around the additional CVRD parking lot, I know they took down Mrs. Giesbrecht's house on First Street there because they're going to build a different building there at some point, I thought, but the lot is still empty. Have you heard anything?
I've only heard that they're reviewing there was some initial plans on the property that's accessed off of Tyee Street that they were looking at. We'd seen preliminary plans for an additional parking lot there, but they've apparently put that on hiatus and don't have any immediate plans for the property on First Street either.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so a motion to resolve to go into closed session. The meeting be closed to the public under the following sections of the Community Charter: Section 91C, Labor Relations or Other Employee Relations; Section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement or enactment; and Section 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality.
So moved.
Okay, seconder. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? So we'll take a little 5-minute break and then reconvene for closed meeting.